Hi, everyone. So glad you're here with us today. I'm Dr. Margo Jacquot. I am your mental health business mentor. And today we have a guest that I think is going to give us some really great insight about how to make our work better for us, to make our practices work better, function better. So let's just dive right in. Today I have with me Dr. Ruth Mannschreck, dentist,
Very
business
good.
strategist, and founder of Shoreline Strategies, LLC. So, Ruth has been doing this for over 30 years and has experience in private practice. After a life altering experience with her daughter's NICU stay, which is a neonatal ICU, she reimagined her business, reducing her hours while boosting revenue. I'm telling you, everybody wants that, Ruth. You know that probably better than
Mhm.
I do. This shift inspired her to develop a streamlined business model centered on efficient systems, high performing teams, and a thriving company culture. Now, through her programs, Business Lifestyle by Design and Prep to Sell It, Dr. Ruth helps entrepreneurs build scalable businesses and ensure they sell for maximum value when the time is right. Always a great question for us to be thinking about. What is the end? Even if we're in the middle, what is the end? Have that in mind. When she's not coaching and mentoring small business owners, Dr. Ruth can be found engrossed in a good book, walking her two dogs, taste testing new wines, or paddleboarding around a lake in northern Michigan. My goodness, that's we should be neighbors. That all sounds fabulous. Those are all things I'd love to do. So, welcome,
Mhm.
Dr. Ruth Mannschreck. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Margo. It's wonderful. I'm very excited about talking to your audience.
We have so many great topics. This is one that I think
Mhm.
is imperative for people to understand. Let's talk a bit about having a business running and running well, running
Mm.
efficiently without us, which, as you can imagine, I think for most small business owners, when I'm talking to them doing consultation, it's like, how do we help you get into the CEO seat, not
Exactly.
the doer seat, not the
Hmm.
cashier seat? So tell us a little bit about
Sure.
you, what you do, how
Sure.
you help people figure that out, and what does that really mean to have a business that runs without you?
First, I'll go back to my story about how I got into consulting in the first place. Started my dental practice from scratch. Things were going along fine. My husband and I had two little boys, and my daughter was born. She had quite a traumatic birth and was in the hospital for almost 6 weeks. When she came home, she had to see 8 different doctors every week. My husband has a full-time career. I was practicing 5 days a week. I said, this has to change. Everything had to change. So I went to my team, just so everyone knows this was not something I did on my own. My team and I said, we have to shove everything into 2.5 days because that's all I have to run my practice so that I can care for my daughter. And we did it. We figured it out. It was not a simple thing. We made lots of mistakes, but we came up with a process. We actually went through 5 different areas of our business and made things work. It took us a year to get back up to the original revenue that we had before we cut our time. And then we grew it from there. And to be honest, we never went back to the 5 day a week scheduling because we had a great rhythm going. We had a great team. So I'll talk about all those parts that we went through, that we had to change a lot of things. And the thing that made it so interesting and so appropriate for other people is there's this big myth that we as owners are just not good at time management. And I am a firm believer that there is no such thing as time management. Time is this ethereal thing, and for us to think that we can control it is just silly. What we really want, what we really need, is behavior management. And you get that by creating it within your business. So probably the first area we went through in looking at how are we going to do this is the internal systems that we had, operating systems that we had in our practice. I would encourage people, if you want to think about doing this in your own practice, to start with your, what I would call your client journey system. It's a system from the very first phone call when they call your office. they're shopping, they're in need, they don't know what they need, they don't know you. From that first intake phone call to the scheduling, to the treatment plan, to the deliverables, all the steps until they end up in dentistry, we call it a recall system. However, you keep track of that whole system from beginning to end. We broke that up into steps, and each step had someone responsible for it, someone who was responsible for doing it, for one thing, but then for taking the information that you garner in that step and giving it to who's next in the system, and just go step by step all the way through. Then that's the big one. If you can get your delivery, your treatment providing down to a system, that's the big nut to crack. And then you can go on and look at your accounts receivable. Do you have a collection system so that it's not like every Thursday, Sally has to start making uncomfortable phone calls? Needs to be a system, and who's responsible and who's going to do it and what do they say? And most importantly, what's the feeling that you want your clients to have while they're in that step of the process? So the very first chunk of this is to really build robust systems into your practice. And as the owner, to make sure that you are not part of all of these systems. In the beginning, you can be a little, but to really have control over where you spend your time, your energy in your practice, because I always want to give business owners permission to do the part about their practice that they love the best. Some of us just love being the consultant, being the therapist, or delivering. I loved sitting at the chair and delivering, using my hands, deciding what people needed. I love that part. Not so much the networking or the marketing or the sales or the finance stuff. But I have other business owners that I coach who they would much rather be the networking, be the face of the practice, do all the networking and have a team of therapists working under them. So whatever it is, pick that one thing that you love to do. That's why you're in the practice that you're in, and do just that. But everything else, figure out how to get it off your plate through these systems and some of the other things that we'll talk about. Does that make sense? That's the best place to start, I think.
Absolutely. I love both of those. There were a lot of nuggets, and folks, if you're listening, really, both of us do business consultation, and I will tell you, these are things we hear from people over and over and over again. So having robust systems is imperative. Thinking about that client journey from beginning to end. We've done this exercise over the last year, and I love that. That's exactly what it is. What is the client journey? I can think about it in terms of what I think ought to be happening, but I need to flip that around to be thinking about what are the people who are calling us needing?
What do you want? What feelings do you want them to have at each step? Like when they're on the phone, that first phone call, there's a lot of stress involved in the dental world. They're afraid, they're in pain. They don't know how to ask for the right kind of help. So they're confused. And that's a lot of emotional energy. So you have to think when you're dividing or designing your systems, what do you want them to feel? And how are you going to equip your team members who are on the call with them to provide for your clients in that needy position that they have? So those are just great conversations to have with your team. It's not like this is a solo job. I'm not giving your owners more work to do. This is a team effort to put the systems in place. After you get systems in place, the next area that you need to look at is communication. I encourage people to build communication right into your systems. I personally am not a fan of having a lot of meetings. So to me, communication doesn't mean more meetings. It means, like when you take that phone call, where in your software do you put all that information so that anyone on the team can find it and carry on and do step 2. So there's no standing at the owner's door and knocking and saying, so what about this? And who do they want? And all those questions, all that information should be stored somewhere that everyone or all the right people have access to, and they all know what comes next. So there's never a question about what's the next thing I can do to move this client along to help solve their problems. I do a few there are probably three kinds of meetings that I really encourage people to have. One is, and this is just an example, in our office every morning we had a 15-minute stand-up huddle. We would stand up is important because we want it to be fast. This is not to sit around and drink coffee. This is let's get organized before we open the doors. And we would talk about who's coming today. Do we have the lab work for all the crowns that we're delivering? Do we have any problem clients who are going to need a little more attention? Do we need just to bring that to everyone's attention so they know where are the holes in the schedule that we could be filling? Where do we need a little more love for some of our anxious patients so that everyone is aware and can be compassionate as needed because we're all on the same page. And then part of that meeting is to look at the next day and say, okay, is there anything we need to get ready for tomorrow so that tomorrow's stand-up huddle is a breeze because we've already checked on things the day before. Makes it much easier to fill holes in the schedule if everyone's aware where they are, what you're supposed to put in that hole, all that. That's one of our communication meetings that's very important in my mind somehow. The other thing I think is to have team meetings that are partly a case review type meeting. Are the cases moving along? Are we making progress? Where are we getting stuck? Can we brainstorm some ideas for how we might get people further along? And the second part of that meeting is really to spend some time growing your team, to have your team, and I'm going to talk about team and culture, but these team meetings, some offices have them once a week, some have them once a month. It depends on the rhythm in your practice, what works for you. Different things work for different collections of personalities in your practice. But just the idea that there is scheduled time for people with certain questions or concerns to bring them up so that it's not, let's catch the doc on our way to her car. Do you know what I mean? So it's not stand outside her door, wait for a moment. There's an organized time. When you have concerns, this is where they go, or this is the person you take them to get ready for that meeting, just to get it a little organized, because not all your team have the same exposure to you during the week. Some team members never see you during the day until you get to lunch or at the end of the day. So it's not fair to them. They have no opportunity to bend your ear. So we just make a time for all of that to happen. Does that make sense?
That's really smart. I like that idea a lot.
So both of these, so far, just these two steps, both are ways to pull things off of your plate to clear up the things that drag you through your schedule. If you looked at your schedule in the scheduling book, it's so simple. It's in nice little chunks. It's the friction happens in between those. When your team knows, I'm going to catch her on the way to the bathroom. So we're getting rid of some of that and putting it in an organized place so that all your team feels like they have access to you. They have access to information. They understand what's going on. They feel valued as people. It just does so much for the morale of your team members, whether they're employees or contractors, either way.
Absolutely. Boy, that makes so much sense. So far, we have get some really good solid systems in place and have robust, really streamlined communication. I love the morning huddle idea, and not to meet, but to meet with purpose and make sure that we have team meetings so that we can talk meaningfully but succinctly about what needs to happen, and for the practice owner to be, or the whomever the doc to be available, the therapist who's ever in charge, whomever you need in leadership to be available, and to make sure you communicate to people when and how, office hours, whatever the case may be. But that way you're not being dragged by everybody's needs when you're just trying to get to the bathroom, which I will tell you is that happens.
Sometimes it's hard. There's this invisible friction that happens, and our day is very different than what it looked like on the schedule at the beginning.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And to your point, it looks nice and neat until it's not. So that's step one and step two. What is step three?
Is to look at your team members. The third piece that you need for a business that runs without you is a very high performing team. And so I like to think of Henry Ford as an example of what I'm talking about. Henry Ford didn't even graduate from high school, and yet he built an empire. And all he really knew how to do was mechanics. He understood and could do mechanics. He made it work. But all the other things that he didn't know about running a business, he surrounded himself with experts in marketing, in sales, in operations, in human relations. So that I love that setup. And because many of us start our practices solo, like we are everything, we're used to wearing 12 hats. So when we get down to wearing 3 or 4 hats, we're actually feeling pretty good. But it's still not that one thing that motivated you to start your practice in the first place. So I encourage people owners to surround themselves with experts. And if experts is a scary word because that sounds expensive, then think of it as a champion. Who would be the champion of all the different various areas in your practice that aren't, you get to pick one if that's what you want to be your one and only contribution to the practice. But more than likely, it's not. It's someone else. And be realistic, like marketing. So much of our marketing is on social media. And you can go to a high school and ask the guidance counselor or the teachers, go to the English department, go to the tech department and say, I have a project. Let's get some of these kids doing your social media. I started doing this. My very first website for my office was done as a class project by the marketing department at the high school, because I had no idea. The websites were brand new. I had no idea what I was doing. And I said, so make this thing for me. And they did. You don't have to pay hugely for expertise. The word expert makes us think it's going to be expensive. It's going to be a full-time person. Doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be.
Oh, brilliant.
And sometimes, what I find mostly in practices that I consult in, I find one person doing 2 jobs. They're expert at one of the jobs they do, and they do the other job just because they know how. And that happens so much. And it's not a horrible thing, but you can really ratchet up what your practice does if you separate those and find someone who's really a champion in the other part. So I encourage people to figure out all the areas that need individual focus, your marketing, your sales, your networking, all those things, your human resources. Pick one person to do that, one champion who just loves doing that, and have them do that. Instead of saying, Sally, I always pick on collection calls because everyone hates doing those. And it's okay, Sally, you're the only one who knows how to talk on the phone, so you get to do these. Find someone who loves helping people who are in financial crisis.
Smart. The idea of a champion, boy, that is brilliant. I love that way of thinking about it. And yes, going to high schools, going and talking to the guidance counselors, asking, because people do need that kind of exposure.
Absolutely. Think
wins.
If you have a community college in your area, they have kids, or they are kids. They have students who are just dying to get experience in, and they bring ideas. It's wonderful to have new energy brought into your practice. You are going to paint some guardrails and some boundaries for these people, but that's not an impossible task. It's not even hard. You just have to think clearly for them so they know where they can play, where they can do their thing that they love to do. So that's my third.
That's excellent. And we've talked before on the podcast about having the right people in the right seats. And there are several people who I think are really business gurus who use that language. But I think yours is a bit more accessible. Not just have the right people in the right seats on the bus, but think of it as a champion of that particular function. I like that language. So what's number 4?
Number 4 is what I call an irresistible business culture.
Excellent. I'm taking notes here. I love this.
Why would your team members choose to work in your practice as opposed to the therapy practice next door? How are you different? What what's winsome? There's a really old word for you, but what's
Mm,
winsome about your practice? Which
mm,
means, how do you support these fabulous team members that you have? They're not all
mhm,
the same. You can't have a cookie cutter culture because all these people are so different. Your clients are different. Your team members are different. They have different needs. They respond to affirmations in different ways. They love to receive praise in
mhm,
different ways. So there's a lot of, I have to get to know my team members much deeper than
mm,
just the fact that I trust their certificates, their certifications, and that they'll
mhm,
do a good job with my clients. I have to really get to know them. Like, what makes them tick? What is going to be in my practice that is irresistible to them, so they would never
mhm.
think of leaving? It's one of the
Right.
key parts of retaining, because employee retention is just a pain in the neck everywhere. And yet, if we create a world inside our practice that's just the way we want it, that has our core values, and those core values, I like to encourage people to, yes, it's nice to write core values. People write, they come up with 4 or 5 big words, they put them on a plaque on the wall, and we never talk about it again. And that's not really very helpful. So I like to take those core values and turn them into what I call core behaviors. Let's take excellence. People always want excellence to be part of their core values, but what in the heck does that mean? What does that look like? How will my clients, my patients know when they see my team members behaving? They're going to think, yep, this is an excellent place because they do these things, because I see them acting like this. So that's a great exercise to do with your team members, to sit down and say, what are our core values? And then what do those core values look like in action? I have one company that went so far. This is so cool. They have a segment of their team meetings every month, and there's a prize for the person who gets caught doing a behavior that reflects one of their core values. So the team
Mm,
members watch each other and they
mm,
bring successes like that to the team
mm.
meeting. They have awards for this. It's so fun. And they're
That's
silly awards, but
excellent.
still, but it's just a way to reward team members for taking initiative, for showing their behaviors, their core behaviors. And it's a way to get team members to watch each other, to support each other, to hold each other up and say, good on you. So
Mm,
I think having an irresistible business culture is hugely important to
mhm,
stepping back from having to do everything. Because if your team members understand your core values, they can use those values, pardon me, those behaviors to tell them how to make decisions. Like, what would this decision look like without going to Dr. Ruth, without going to Margo? How can I make this decision based on our core values? So there's another way to get people not to line up outside your door.
excellent. Having that positive culture, and
Mhm.
I think you're absolutely speaking our language, having that irresistible business culture and catching behaviors that represent those core values. These are brilliant ideas. I love that. Because again, all of this is how do we free up our time? And at the end, I want to hear about number 5, and then I want to hear what you think about what is the business owner supposed to do with themselves then? You said do the things they enjoy, but how do they get their fingers off the steering wheel, that they're gripping and
Yes,
white knuckling? But tell us about number 5, please. What is I want to say the last step, but I'm
sure.
sure it's just the
Oh,
last in
sure.
your model. So,
So the next step is you really have to develop great leadership.
mm,
You
yeah.
do have to grow into being a leader of your team. Now, I'm really old, and when I was young and starting out on this, I learned leadership the old style, which is very top down. So the people that were above me, when I worked in corporate, were above me. They told me what to do because they knew things I didn't know. So I was a leader because of what I knew. That's not the way to do leadership, at least not with the younger generations. They are not at all interested in the top-down way of doing business, of being a leader. So instead of leading from in front, some people do that, and that works well for some people. But you can also lead from the middle, and you can lead from the back, from behind your team. That's a big shift if you've been a top-down kind of leader going in the past. To make the switch, it's easier to go from being in front, and then you start being in the middle and leading with your team. And then eventually you can lead from the back and put them in front. You'll scare them if you go right from leading
Right.
from the front to now you're all out there on your own and I'm just going to push.
Right. They'll feel dropped.
They
Yeah.
will. And
Yeah.
probably the biggest part that helped me, because I was a top down, I was a do this. Think about it, a dental office, somebody could die in my office. So I didn't say, you can clean your instruments however you want. As this is how you're going to do it. And this is how much time it's going to, I was very much a top down. I know what I'm doing, so you do it my way. I was all over the board like that. And it was a lot for me. It was scary to even think of letting people make up their own minds. So I was very transparent with my team. And I said, this is a testing that we're doing. I'm going to test leading from the middle. We're going to do this together. So to me, that step was me being transparent with my team and not trying to sound like a know-it-all business owner who said, okay, no, we're going to do everything this way. That doesn't go well with younger people. They will work their little hearts off for you if they understand and love what you're aiming at, and you treat them like humans and let them use their brains. So that means you have to paint a very vivid picture of what your end result is going to be. You have to give them parameters. You have to give them guardrails so that they don't get themselves in trouble. No one can die in my office. So you paint a very vivid picture of what the end result is, and you give them guardrails, you give them parameters, and then you say, now use that beautiful brain of yours and figure out how to do this. That is so attractive to younger people. They do not want to blindly follow us and do this just like we told them. They're going to end up in the same place. They're going to figure out that, yep, the way Ruth wanted it done is the best way, but they got there on their own, and I let them use their brain. And that means I appreciate them as a human being, as silly as that sounds. It's that basic human need to be seen and to not just be a tool that I use to get where I want my business to go.
Exactly. Love that.
It's that you grow into being a great leader of your team with them. You're not going to transform into one of these overnight, but you can do it with your team. And I've found in so many offices that the team appreciates being along for the ride, understanding and being part of the transformation of your office, because it is very transformative to your office when you start leading, if you have not, or changing the way you lead. If you've been a heavy leader before, bringing them up to speed and up to, because at the end, remember, we're surrounding ourselves with champions, with experts who are actually better at what they do than we are, which means you need them out in front of you and you need to be leading from behind them at some points. Wherever your comfort zone is on that, your team will appreciate the fact that you're acknowledging their problem solving, their brilliance, their brains, their creativity, all those things we whoosh right over because we want them to just do what I tell you.
Just do what I tell you, do it the right way, AKA my way. Or the other folks leaders who will, or owners who will promote someone because they're good at their job. Doesn't mean they're a great leader. So they might need some leadership development. So we can't just promote people and toss them out front. We have to your point, you maybe start next to them and then you move to the middle, and then you move to the back. Ruth, this is great. Now we have our 5 steps. So I'm going to reiterate, you have good, robust, solid systems. You have really good, streamlined, robust communication. You want to have a high performing team and have champions for the tasks at hand. You want to have an irresistible business culture, and you want to have great leadership for yourself, through yourself, and for the people you choose. Those are excellent. So if practice owners can get those pieces in place, now what do they do with themselves? You said in the beginning, and we just mentioned it a few minutes ago, do what you enjoy. But I'm sure you've noticed this, boy, some folks, this is their baby, and they feel
I
like they're
know.
sending it off on the bus for the first day of school and they have no idea where it's going. How do you help leaders, owners begin to take their hands off the wheel?
I encourage people to follow those steps in order and to do it with your team. I don't like to use the word don't, but it's not helpful to try and do it yourself and just present it to your team as a finished product. And the owners who work with their teams and gradually do these steps together have a better feeling for, can I let go of this piece and let somebody else run with it, because they've designed the process, they've seen the communication, and they see where they have constant impact or constant communication with their team members. So they catch, if they're going off the rails, we catch it early. So I don't encourage people to try to do it all at once, gradually work up to it. Starting with systems is very non-threatening. And you remember, as the owner, you get to have this final stamp of approval for all these things. You're always going to be part of that. And you let go of things. I have different systems for delegating and teaching people how to delegate. And you don't start off by handing an unknown person a huge project and say, get it done. You have to, some people are better at being delegated to than other people are. And some projects are easier to delegate than others. We have a system for how to figure out those two pieces. How is this person as a delegatee, and how is this project as something I can hand off to someone? Is it easy? Is it hard? Do they have to do what I say? Can they make up their own? Those are all things to take into consideration before you start delegating. But I have found if you go through these steps with your team, you'll feel much more comfortable when it comes time to peel your fingers off of the steering wheel. And think of all of this as testing. This isn't, you can always say, let's run this process, this new part of the system for a week and see what happens. We'll sit down on Friday, we'll go through, we'll debrief, we'll say this worked well, the pros and cons, this didn't work so well, what can we tweak? You're always testing. So it's not, oh, that didn't work, never do that again. Think of it as a testing, and you're going to tweak it to get it better and better each time, instead of demanding that you get it perfect yourself the very first time.
Exactly. Oh, I love that. So, folks, that's, I think, great advice also is develop this with your team.
Yeah.
Everyone feels a sense of ownership. They feel a sense of contribution. And boy, we get to test this as we go. And step by step, then you take off one finger. We have 5 of them. You have 5 steps. Take off one finger at a time. And then you go and do and be the CEO. That is really the owner's job. Dr. Ruth Mannschreck, this has been wonderful. What excellent advice, a great system. I love that. I took some copious notes for myself because I'm always working to improve how things work at our practice. So thank you very much for your time and your wisdom. If folks want to get a hold of you, and people, we will have Dr. Ruth's information in the show notes. But what is the best way for people to find you?
So if they would like some information about this process I just talked about, we do have a free resource for your listeners. If they go to workfewerhours.com, you can download a checklist of all these things to help you get a little more comfortable with each of the parts. Our website is shorelinestrategies.com. But I think reaching out and going through that it's a little PDF. It's not a big thing, but it does help you work your way through the things we talked about today.
Excellent. That's really wonderful to have that. So folks, please go check out these resources. If you would like to work with Dr. Ruth, it sounds like that would be a great way for people to reach you as well. Sounds like you have lots of experience and can give people great suggestions about where they are in their process and help direct them about what to do next, which is really
Right.
what people are
Mhm.
hoping for. So
Exactly.
wonderful,
Right.
wonderful. Dr. Ruth, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. Folks, thank you for joining us. We will look forward to having all of you with us next time. Be well.